My doctor's office sucks. Disorganized would be an improvement. Rude, snippy, God complex, they have it all covered. When it comes to RX renewals they're very snippy about have the pharmacist fax us a request. 1980 wants their fax machine back. I phoned the pharmacy on Monday to ask for a renewal and they faxed the doctor's office. Crickets. On Friday morning I was the store and asked the pharmacy tech if the renewal was ready. They said they hadn't heard back from the doctor. The pharmacist called both the office and the doctor's line and left messages. When she hadn't heard back in an hour she faxed them the fourth request. When 11 a.m. rolls around and she hasn't heard back she came up with a strategy. She would fill 2 prescriptions, walk over to the fax machine and punch resend. She would go back to her station, fill 2 more prescriptions and repeat. At around 1:30, so maybe 14 resends, the doctor's office frantically called her to stop sending renewal requests. And she sweetly told them that since they hadn't responded since Monday she was just taking care of her customer, me, and she wasn't sure they were ever going to respond. She had the renewal at 1:45, filled it by 2:15, called me and I picked it up at 3. I love my pharmacist. I was about 12 or 13 and was babysitting my sister and her friend. They were playing house and they found some empty beer cans my parents must finish before going out. They asked if they could play with them. I cleaned them out and let them have them. About 2 days later my dad bursts into my room screaming at me for giving 6-year-old beer. Mind you, I was still asleep when he burst in, so I was completely confused. Later, he showed me the empty cans in my sister's room and asked why I let them drink. I tried to explain the situation. They were empty. I rinsed them out and put water in them. He didn't believe me, because my sister was so adamant about getting me grounded. Summertime, no phone, no going out, no allowance, but still had to do the chores, no pool, we had one in the yard. 2 months, mostly my whole summer, grounded. To say that I was ticked off is an understatement. So, being older, and wiser, I tricked her into confession. I asked my mom to stand by the kitchen window. It was open and lead to our porch. I asked my sister after a bunch of small talk, why did you lie to mom and dad about me giving you beer, when it was water? Her reply was, snarky face and all, so you'd get in trouble. My mom flew out of that kitchen with the wooden spoon. This was well over 30 years ago, so this was much more commonplace than today. Sister got a spanking and grounded and I was repaid my allowance, plus some, and was allowed a pool party that weekend, that I invited all the kids in the neighborhood to, including sister's friends. She watched from her room all day. Now as adults we laugh about it. But darn, kids can be straight up evil. I know this happened at Christmas time, but I just remembered this story even though it still affects our family to this day. A little backstory, so last Christmas my family, Moan, Dad, brother, 13M, and me, 15M, had to find a Christmas gift for my dad's stepbrothers' 5 and 7-year-old boys. We have to do this every year and it's the worst. These kids are the biggest brats you've ever seen. They punch, kick, make messes, and everything bad they could possibly do every time we see them and their parents say nothing. Every Christmas, we get them a gift worth around 100 each, sometimes 2 gifts, but always equals 100 EA. Every Christmas, they complain they hate what we get them and that they don't get enough toys. It's so annoying. This will be important later. So in early December, we were deciding what to get them this Christmas and I had an idea. Go to the dollar store and just get them tons of junky toys. Nothing that will last more than a day, but it'll appear as if we got them tons of toys. My parents love this idea because they hate the griping at 75 checks and nice 25 toys. So we go to the dollar store and get a bunch of toys, probably 50 for each kid. That's only 50 each instead of 100, but oh well. Christmas comes and we go to their house. The kids' eyes glow up as they open toy after toy and for once they are happy. Their parents though. My uncle and aunt are smiling on the outside, but are giving us the stink eye because they can tell these are cheap toys. Lately I brought this up to laugh about at my family's dinner table, no extended family obviously, and my parents said oh that wasn't funny. Aunt X and Uncle X were pretty annoyed at us and still are. This made me feel like I'm a jerk because it was my idea and our uncle and aunt knew that from my mom saying, insert my name, picked these out. I finished my PhD in the middle of a terrible recession, and I was having a hard time finding a permanent job. I stayed afloat financially by adjunct teaching, low pay, no benefits, and by doing whatever odd jobs I could find. I was a volunteer EMT at the time, and a friend was able to get me a night shift job in a local hospital as an IV technician. Strictly speaking, That should have been a job for licensed nurses, so I suspect the hospital was violating some laws by having EMTs do that, but we were very cheap labor. The nursing staff made it abundantly clear they thought the EMTs were uneducated halfwits, who suggested that I try to get an associate's degree to better myself, and that we were utterly beneath contempt. We were completely at the mercy of the charge nurses, and all they ever wanted us to do was take out the garbage and clean up patients after their diapers had exploded. Me, how did you manage to get it on the ceiling? Contrary to what the job description implied, it was actually very rare for us to be asked to start an 4-line on anyone, and even then it was usually for combative or belligerent patients. One time I was asked to start a line on a woman, and the second I stepped in the door she bellowed, "I only want someone who does IT professionally." I had enough practice with that sort of thing from my volunteer work that I could have threaded a needle on a roller coaster ride, and I calmly assured her I could manage it without difficulty. Reluctantly, she let me take her hand and I was able to get the line in quickly and painlessly. As soon as I returned to the nursing station, the charge nurse snarled at me, "Empty the garbage from the patient rooms." I asked if I could at least wait until the patients were asleep so the patient I just started the line on wouldn't erupt, but she wouldn't let me get a word in edgewise. So, I did exactly as I was asked. Predictably, the woman I had just started the line on saw me with the trash bin and she started screaming, "They had the garbage man start my 4. What kind of %% hospital is this?" Postscript: as the early morning approached I went to the lobby where the janitorial staff was gathering. I quickly picked up on the fact that they all had chips on their shoulders, and they felt like they were being treated like lower life forms. And from my own experiences, I knew they were absolutely right. So to this day I make a point of being absolutely respectful of everyone, know how lowly of a job they seem to have, and to help them out if I can. That has actually paid off a lot of unexpected dividends, as the janitors have proven to have the most accurate gossip network. It seems the executives think the janitors are invisible, and the execs say a lot of sensitive things when they're around. And my corporate spies just love passing the information to me. Smile. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. I just encountered 2 of the most clueless users ever and I just had to share. Background: I am working tech support in a medium-sized company and most users are quite nice and helpful in solving their problems, but some just seem to have no idea how the world works. I met the same kind of stupid twice the last days, so this story consists of 2 parts. Part 1, my program is gone. A nice lady asked me to install a program for her, as she can't do it herself, because our users don't have admin privileges on their machines. I gladly help her. It's done in less than 5 minutes. Next day she calls me, upset, and tells me the program is gone. When I try to remote to her machine, it turns out she is using a colleague's notebook and login. So, the program is not there because it is a completely different device. Part 2, my phone is not ringing. We are not using normal phones, but a software to call and answer calls from your computer. Works pretty well so far, until this user contacted me and told me the following. When he gets a call, it doesn't ring, he just gets a notification, no audio. So I tried the obvious things first. Does Windows have the correct audio device selected? Is the audio device turned on? Are the software settings correct? I just couldn't find the problem. It took me longer than I like to admit to figure that the user simply isn't using his headset. Like, it's on his desk, he just couldn't be bothered to wear it and only uses it after answering a call. I'm still baffled. Just how do these people think that stuff works? Black magic? Also, English is not my first language, so feel free to correct any errors and typos. Edit, typo. Yesterday during lunch shift, I had a customer come in and sit on our outdoor patio with her dog, a gorgeous husky, and her friend. They had been out hiking all day on the Appalachian Trail. When I came by to get their orders, she first ordered for her dog, a plain half-pound burger and French fries, for $11, because he loves potatoes. Then the 2 women gave me their own orders, seared salmon and chicken breast. When the food arrived, she put the burger basket down on the ground for the pup and just let him go to town. He was so happy. This made my entire day. The fact that she ordered for the dog before herself and her friend. The fact that she spent $11 on a single meal for her dog and ordered him a whole half-pound burger and fries because the doggo loves potatoes. The fact that she thought he deserved a good-ass meal after a long day of hiking. It was beautiful. The whole staff got a kick out of it too. A bright spot on an otherwise slow Sunday. I'll keep this brief, but I've been at my current job for over 4 years now. It's a liquor store slash gas station. At our gas pumps, due to the company wanting to make things as convenient as possible for the customers, people have the option to pump gas before paying inside. We just have to approve the license plate. It's dumb, and yes, it does result in a lot of gas drive-offs. One of the funniest was from about 2 years ago. There was a man with no legs who was pre-approved for gas with someone else in the driver's seat. Expecting him to come in to pay, my manager was shocked to watch him hang the pump up, barely throw his wheelchair into the car and hop to the passenger seat, then had his friend speed away. We did call the police, but the plates were stolen and they never caught the guy. First time posting. This happened sometime last year, so the conversation is a bit paraphrased. I work for an unarmed security company. Complete with uniform and badge. We aren't allowed to have weapons but can defend ourselves or detain people for the police. I'm not one for confrontation, but I am a large, scary-looking guy. I'm over 6 feet and I look like a former linebacker. Usually, if I stop at the store after work, I take off my uniform shirt, but that day was chilly and my undershirt is pretty thin. So I wore it into the store. I wasn't planning on buying anything, just checking prices for a birthday gift for my wife, so I didn't have a cart or basket. I notice a young woman, early 20s or younger I would guess. I never asked, "Come into my aisle." She looks scared and is looking around, kinda panicked. She sees me and makes a beeline for me. She says, "Hey, can you walk me to my car? Some creepy guy is following me." Now, this isn't the first time I've gotten this request, and I absolutely never say no if a woman comes to me with a request like this. So I say yes and we start heading to the front of the store. Halfway there, this guy pops out in front of and starts talking to her, saying that she forgot to give him her number. I step between them and tell him that she does not appreciate him following her and that he will be removed from the store if he persists. Obviously I don't work there, but he doesn't know that. He responds that is his girlfriend and that they are just having a little fight. She is shaking her head with every word he speaks. I tell him it's time for him to leave and he flips out and starts screaming at me. It takes all of 10 seconds for a bunch of people to notice, including one employee who pulls out a radio and starts talking to someone. As this guy yells at me, I keep myself firmly between him and the woman and repeat that he needs to leave in a calm voice. I figured that a manager would be by soon enough, so I wasn't overly worried. And sure enough, a manager and some of the actual store security, they have store logos on polos and look nothing like my uniform. They ended up restraining him as he kept alternating between screaming and cursing at me and the employees and begging the young woman to just tell them he is her boyfriend. I overheard while she was talking to store security that she had never met the guy before. I explained that I was just shopping and didn't work there as I walked her to her car, and we had a good laugh over that misunderstanding. She was very grateful that I helped regardless. Today I received a coupon in one of my apps for a free bottle of pain meds, 50 count of ibuprofen or Tylenol. Seeing as it was expiring today and this was a once-in-a-lifetime bargain for me, I drove over to the store to get it. The location I'm at has the option to either check out at the register with a cashier, or self-service. When I found my product and headed up front, I noticed that the one cashier available was having difficulties with a customer who was arguing about a different coupon/deal. The cashier was being very understanding and trying to explain things, but the lady was having none of it. We're all wearing masks, but I could tell the cashier was getting a little disheartened with the exchanges, so I decided to wait in line rather than self-checkout. The cashier ended up calling a manager over to work with the disgruntled customer, then moved over to another register to help me. I'm pretty socially awkward, but I sometimes know how to make people smile and laugh. So when the cashier scanned my item and the kiosk said I owed $0, I did a little happy dance/fist pump to celebrate, and she laughed with me over it. I'd like to think that I made her feel a little better, if not at least take her mind off of the prior encounter for a moment. I have to wear blue scrubs where I work. Not really close to anything I've seen anyone who works at Walmart wear. However, one day after work I stopped by my local Walmart, and as I looked for the ever-disappearing disinfect, a woman asked me if I worked there. I said I don't, but maybe I can help you anyway? She said she couldn't reach the tissues, so I climbed up on the metal shelf and grabbed them. I felt as proud as a little kid would when she said, "Well, look at you." It made me feel so happy to be able to help someone out, just cause. Talking to a co-worker about condiments reminded me of 2 incidents at my old job, the king of fast food restaurants. Nothing major, but they gave me a chuckle. 1, lady comes to order often, 2 or 3 times a week, always the same order. 2 chicken sandwiches, and a double Whopper with cheese, all with extra mayo. Always complains at the order box that there is never enough mayo. She says I want extra mayo this time. After a dozen or so times of hearing her complaints, I do what any rational person would do. I went into the kitchen, took the spatula for the mayo and fling a gob of it onto all 3 of her sandwiches. It was enough that I could feel it coming out of the sandwiches through the wrappers. Next time I saw her she ordered the same food, but didn't complain about not getting enough mayo. 2. One of the managers would always get the same thing for lunch. Whopper Jr., no lettuce, extra mayo. One time she complained to me that I didn't put enough mayo on it. Wasn't a serious complaint, but she said put whatever amount of mayo you find disgusting on it in a joking manner. I dislike mayo, so the next time I made her sandwich I put the thinnest layer possible on the bun for her. She laughed, and never asked anyone to make her sandwich again. A while back, when I worked at a grocery store, a woman yells at me as I was walking by. I didn't realize she was talking to me at first until she started yelling louder. I turned around and apologized. She then proceeds to yell at me as if it was my fault that the bananas were green. She asked me to go check in the back, which I did, and all the bananas were green as well, and obviously there is nothing I can do. She then is frustrated and tells me now I have to go somewhere else and storms off. Also, the next closest grocery store is a 5-minute walk away. What was I supposed to do because the bananas were green? Also, bananas are one of those fruits that won't sell because it has brown spots. All the ripe ones were gone and it only takes a few days for bananas to ripen. A couple of days ago I was talking to a co-worker about traveling. I told her I've always wanted to go to Australia and I thought it would be cool to see kangaroos in the wild. Well, another co-worker, aka Kevin, was listening to our conversation and decided to interrupt. According to him, kangaroos are dinosaurs and are therefore extinct. When I tried to point out that he was wrong, he just laughed at me and told me all the videos on the internet featuring kangaroos are CGI. He also seems to think that humans are not mammals, because humans only have 2 legs and mammals are supposed to have 4. I'm a courtroom assistant in a Southeast Asian country. I'd rather not get much further than that on identifying information. We do both security and practical assistance like moving displays, escorting juries, and some ceremonial stuff as well. This was the sentencing of an evil flip on several high crime offenses, similar to what a capital offense may be in America. Here high crime is the level above criminal offense, or felony for the rest of the world. He stalked, kidnapped, raped, and murdered a locally famous and growing pop artist who was pregnant. He was charged with stalking, high crime kidnapping, high crime rape, high crime murder, high crime fetal homicide, and a bunch of other stuff. Evil Flip, as he will be referred to from here on out, was on suicide precautions as he made threats against his own life in prison, so he was in spiffy paper clothes. We were well into victim impact statements. The victim had a large family and there were something like 35 individuals addressing the court. We're something like 28 statements into it. Next up was Granddad. These are always really emotional, families are always really upset for good reason, but this 80-plus old guy is the worst I can remember. He was crying, breathing heavily, shaking, the entire sentencing. He was called to make his statement, starts walking up, about past the counsel table. He then turns, tackles the attorneys and Evil Flip. He didn't get much in on the Evil Flip, maybe a kick and 2 punches before 15 of us pile up on him. He was taken into custody, and it quickly became apparent that Evil Flip got what was coming. Evil Flip is screaming and gagging for about 20 seconds, then he starts convulsing, came back in about 2 minutes choking/gagging, really bad. We put him on his side and get an ambulance on the way. The rest of the gallery was evacuated and court went into recess. By time the ambulance arrives he's not breathing, only twitching and has no pulse. They do CPR, take him out to the hospital. He was revived and died later that day. Coroner's report said his brainstem was damaged, his skull was broken, and brain herniated through break in his skull. The Granddad was interviewed by national police who have jurisdiction of courts. He said that he'd been planning that for days, he felt no remorse, said if he had time he would have killed the attorneys too. It also came out that the Granddad was in my country's mob back in the day, had 40 years in prison prior for drowning someone in petrol and lighting their corpse on fire. He was suspected but not confirmed to be involved in several other high-profile murders. He was charged with murder, conspiracy, contempt of court, and 2x simple battery for the attorneys. He was found not guilty of everything except contempt of court, to which he was originally sentenced to 4 years, but it was reduced to terminal probation with home confinement due to his health. Hello guys, just thought I would share my story here. Thanks all who read it. So I'll start right off the bat. I'm a small 20-year-old male. 5.1 in height and 83 pounds. Doctor says I'm healthy so it's okay. I never hated myself because of how small I was, just would rather get annoyed by it at times. People never believed me when I told them my age and always assumed that I had an eating disorder yada yada yada. I usually wouldn't be annoyed for too long and then would just go on my way, but this one day really ticked me off. I had just moved in with my mom in a 3-story apartment. It's nice and has super nice people in it, so I felt at home. A couple days after moving in, I was taking out the trash and a rather plump woman was at the bottom steps near the door. I politely smiled and she just stared at me, which kinda made me feel awkward. As I went out I could still feel her eyes on me. When I returned to the door and was about to head back up, the lady loudly said, "Doesn't your mother feed you?" I turned around startled and asked what? The lady then pointed at my legs and said, "You look like you haven't had a decent meal in years. Did you just come out of concentration camp?" I was shocked at how she just kept blabbing out loud with no care in the world. I felt so awkward and was thinking how to get out of this situation when her phone rang. I quickly walked back up to my room and tried to forget about the incident. I don't know why that one incident stuck with me, but it hurt a bit instead of annoyed me. As of now I haven't seen much of her around. Usually she goes outside to smoke and that's the only time I will see her. Talk about super rude. For a bit of context, I served at this place for almost 3.5 years before the pandemic started. I graduated college, completed a 1-year unpaid internship, passed the registered dietitian exam, all while still serving here part-time to full-time depending on my schedule. I got a part-time job as enrolled in January, so I worked 3 days/week as enrolled and 3 to 4 days/week serving. It was a nice balance. Like most of us here, I was pretty darn upset when we all got laid off. Especially since I wasn't able to claim the rest of my sick hours, but that's another story. Unfortunately, my road job reduced my hours to 8 hours/week, so I was riding on that unemployment train for a bit. Then in May, a nursing facility down the street from my old restaurant offered me a 32-hour/week position. The facility got hit with a pretty bad outbreak in March/April, so a lot of staff either quit or went on LOA. Fast forward to today when I got the call from my old GM. She said something along the lines of, "So I know you're getting super into your career right now, but we wanted to know if you're interested in coming back to work with us." I politely declined and thanked them for considering me. Part of me felt bad for declining, but the other part of me felt lucky that I'm in this position. I wish I had the chance to have a proper last shift where I hug all of the staff, say farewell to my regulars, and enjoy that ice-cold shift beer at the bar. There's also a tradition where a staff member gets a whipped cream pie in the face at the end of their last shift, so I'm glad I didn't get that lol. But I wish I had a chance to say bye to our chef, who is on a ventilator and ECMO right now after catching the virus from his wife who also works at a nursing facility. He was always the first one to tell me there's pizza or cake in the back of the kitchen. Someone in the company started a GoFundMe for him and his family that has raised over $25,000 for him and his family. Smile. DLDR, part-time server, part-time dietitian here. Got laid off from the restaurant, then got offered a full-time gig as a dietitian. The restaurant called today asking to come back. I politely declined. Chef caught the virus and is on a ventilator. I wish I had a chance to say goodbye. Obligatory on mobile, and this happened a few years ago. For various boring reasons, including past parental weirdness, I decided a couple decades ago to live life commando. It's marvelous. The boys get to swing freely like a couple of drunk Scotsmen looking for a fight, and I live bravely with the inherent risks. I am also a furniture builder, which essentially just means that I am addicted to buying tools. 7 or 8 years ago, I got word of the mother of all estate sales. The sale was primarily centered on a gentleman's wood shop, which was ripe with amazing hand and machine tools. Day of the sale comes and my wife and I, along with our neighbor and his wife, head on down, ready to score tools. I should note that my neighbor's wife is a fundy Christian that is typically afraid for her mortal soul. That day, decided to rock a pair of Costco shorts, shakes fist at Kirkland clothes, that had long since worn through the pitiful integrity of its inseam. I cleaned up tool-wise. Scored a new drill press, a giant Delta sander, bunch of hand tools. After completing the sale, we started loading up. Now I should mention that in attendance were several dozen other woodworking fiends, mostly crusty conservative boomers, scrambling about, doing their best to live up to the size of their mustaches. Loading the giant sander, I squat, ass to the garage in the crowd, prepared to lift when the unthinkable happened. The shorts didn't just trip, they disintegrated. My hairy brown eye was pointed like a cannon at the now silent crowd of gentlemen and my neighbor's wife who stood directly behind me. We were already lifting, so I did not pause. We loaded the sander in the truck and I suddenly realized we were far beyond a bare-ass scenario as I felt the breeze both front and back. The only thing left intact on the shorts was the waist. The seam had torn front to back and there was no way to cover myself. And we still had more tools to load. My wife was in stitches. My neighbor's wife though, jumped into action. Unwilling to risk her eternal soul, she removed her jacket and told me to tie it around my waist, then she went to sit in the truck. She was petite and I was not, and this left me with a decision, cover the front or cover the back. Since we were lifting, I decided the back was most important and did my best not to catch the two-live crew on equipment we were loading. 600 pounds of power tools later and we were off. Neighbor's wife never again spoke of the incident. You may ask, did I use this as a teaching moment? Did I recognize the inherent risks of living commando? No. Of course not. The Indigo Scotsman would go full William Wallace if I tried to oppress their freedoms. Living this way, every outing is a flirtation with calamity, but it's a calculated risk. TLDR, I showed my staff in my mud hole to a large group of woodworkers and a stifled Christian woman because my shorts broke while free bowling. Okay, so my roommates want me to pay half the bills when they use all the dishes like 2 loads a day. Do laundry every day, never a full load. Take 20 to 40 minutes showers. I'm fully ready including my shower in 15 minutes also they never clean. I'm constantly cleaning up after them and their pets. They say they will but never do. Also, I work with one of them and she doesn't have a license so I drive her. She never offers gas money. I pay $70 a week in gas. She knows this. I ask why doesn't she just get a license? She says she can't afford it. Her wife doesn't work and is supposed to clean the house while we work. She never does. I'm just so frustrated. So I just clocked in an hour ago, night auditor, and I was immediately asked by the evening shift to check on a room that was evicted by police. I went up to the room, found it completely empty, and locked the door with a new key card. Easy peasy, right? And #X200B. Well, not even 5 minutes after the evening girl left, a Latino family came up to the front desk. It was a young-looking couple, and a little girl wandering around the lobby behind them, none of whom are wearing masks, BTW. The woman is the only one trying to talk to me in broken English, saying that she left her morning bag in the room. I already knew that they were evicted by police, so I tried to clearly inform them that they can't go back into the room until management is here in the morning. And #X200B. I had to try and explain this multiple times, with her muttering something in Spanish to her BF/husband every time. And again, she would look back at me and say something about her morning bag. It didn't matter how many times I tried to explain I can't let them into the room, since she kept asking about it in broken English. I have no idea if they really didn't know Spanish too well, or if it was just a ploy for me to give up and make them a keycard. Anyway, by the time I got fed up, the woman was muttering to her husband again while I went on to Google. By the time she tried to ask for the 5th time about her morning bag, I read from Google Translate, "Tienes que volver por la mañana." And #X200B. I don't think either of them expected a fat, balding white guy to speak back at them in Spanish, because they just gawked at me for a moment before leaving in silence. The evening shift girl came back briefly to find her phone, and laughed her ass off when I explained what happened. So obligatory this happened a while ago. Me, 23F, and my sister, 20F, decided to go shopping and we were in Sephora looking for some foundation. I was showing her shades on my neck when she turned around to grab some lipstick on the other side she had been talking about for a while. I ended up finding a foundation I thought was a close match and I saw her bent over looking for lipstick in the drawers where they keep extra stock. So I mindlessly started slapping her ass a few times to ask her how the foundation looked while looking in the mirror. Can I help you? Turns out as was grabbing an associate's ass. I have never been more embarrassed and red-faced in my life. I of course apologized profusely and tried to get out of there as fast as I could. I found my sister on the other side of the store where she promptly laughed after I told her the story. TLDR, grabbed my sister's ass to ask her how some foundation looked ended up being an associate. I work in a family-owned store. Last week I fractured my foot when I was hiking. Thankfully my job has been very accommodating because I really need to save up for college in the fall. I'll be in a walking boot/aircast for most of the summer but I'll still be able to work. My managers just told me to tell them when I need to rest and I can sit down and work the cash register. Today was my first full day walking around and standing on my foot, so towards the end of my 8-hour shift my foot was absolutely killing me. My manager asked if I needed to sit down and work the cash register and I said yes please. So I'm sitting down working the cash register and I notice a lady staring at me from across the room. She comes to pay and asks why I'm sitting down. I told her I have an injured foot and need to rest it for a bit. Pretty soon my manager comes out and overhears, and the lady tells him that it's really unprofessional for me to sit down while I'm working. Again, he tells her that I'm injured and that's why I'm sitting down. She looks over the counter and sees my boot and said if I'm injured I shouldn't be working, but it's unprofessional for me to sit down and work the cash register. Pretty soon she leaves and my manager told me I could leave for the day but said we need to discuss hours and logistics of how long I can sit down, etc. So now I'm worried my hours will get cut or I won't be able to do my job, all because some lady said it was unprofessional. My foot is absolutely killing me right now and I'm not looking forward to working a whole shift on my foot if that's what my manager meant by discussing how long I can sit down, aka I can't sit anymore. Up until this point I thought we had a good system, but now I'm nervous what he's going to say to me tomorrow. Is it just me or does it not seem like a big deal that I was sitting down? I have an injury, for God's sake. I wasn't being lazy. Ugh. I am relatively new to the IT industry, and work as a service coordinator at a small MSP. I don't typically work tickets, but I do try to ask the easy questions and walk users through little things if I think it can be handled in 5 to 10 minutes. This morning I got a call from a user having issues with setting up a monitor. She had been working remotely and needed a second monitor, so she picked one up from the office and was having issues getting it to work at home. Her first issue was finding a cord to connect the monitor to her laptop, but thankfully she was able to track one down. That is where our conversation picks up. And #X200B. User: I found a cord for my monitor, but when I plug it in both screens go black. Me: okay, what kind of cord is it? User: describes an analog cord /. Me: you probably just need to change the input on your monitor. Do you see any buttons on the side of your monitor? User: no. Me: what about on the bottom? User: yes. Proceeds to describe said buttons /. Me: great. Please press the menu button for me. User: nothing is happening. Me: is the monitor turned on? User: how would I know if it's on or not? Me: when you press the power button, does the light turn on or off? User: Me: is the power cord plugged into the wall? User: I need a power cord? And #X200B. Once the cord in question was retrieved from the office, we were able to get her monitors set up the way she liked them without issue. I live in a very small town, rural county in the Midwest United States, so a case like this happening in such a normally uneventful area is extremely memorable and stays alive in gossip and such. In 1974, a girl named Mary Ann Becker was found dead, tied to a piano with electrical cord and rope. People were brought in for questioning, but no arrests were ever made. For a starting point, here is a link to an article written in the next town over. There is a man in the area nicknamed Scary Jerry who is generally accepted to be the murderer. I have heard that he was questioned, but never officially arrested or charged. There has been plenty of speculation about the case, but no solid, concrete evidence. Anyone want to try tackling this case? You might recall that Kavina the nanny once forgot she had a key to our front door. That wasn't isolated, she forgot things a lot. We sometimes joke that we half expected her to forget one of our children, so we'd have an excuse to fire her on the spot, but that never happened. As an example, if we didn't need her on a particular weekday and we were going to give her a vacation, we'd tell her a few weeks in advance, then send her a text message to confirm so that there was no confusion as to which day we meant, and so she'd have a chance to put it in her calendar. On multiple occasions we saw her meticulously writing it down in her spiral-bound day planner, which she wrote in frequently, but never seemed to actually read. When the day approached, she'd have completely forgotten and we'd have to remind her multiple times, otherwise she'd just show up, confused. The incident that bothered us the most was when she forgot our instructions not to teach our baby any baby sign language. You see, even with correction my eyesight isn't very good, so I was worried that if our baby was trying to sign from halfway across the room I'd have no idea what she was trying to do, so we just didn't want to use it. We had a long discussion about this on the first day and Kavina told us she completely understood, baby sign is great, but just not right for us. Then a few weeks later we caught her teaching signs to our baby. She had completely forgotten, it was like it was brand new information. The funniest incident was related to putting things away. We like to keep our house pretty organized, but whatever she found, dishes, office supplies, toys, she seemed incapable of returning it to its proper place. The kitchen was the worst. She'd find a cooking utensil in one drawer, then later wash it and put it away on the completely opposite side of the kitchen. It was particularly frustrating with my poor eyesight, and I was having a hard time finding anything anymore. We tried teaching her where things go, and we tried asking her to just leave things on the drying rack, but she couldn't even remember to do that. One weekend I got fed up and reorganized the entire kitchen back to the way we originally had it. Then I made labels for all of the cabinets and drawers, labels like Tupperware, baking dishes, measuring cups and spoons, etc. I was hoping that with the labels she'd be able to figure out where things go, and maybe after a few weeks we could remove the labels. The hilarious part was that she noticed the labels right away, but she had no idea that they were for her. She thought it was a great idea that we had decided to organize our kitchen, and she told us she hoped the labels would help us remember where to put things. Background: my parents have been divorced since I was 10 and I had been living with my mother until I turned 18. My dad and I have never been very close. I would always subconsciously put up a fake personality to make it seem like I was happy whenever my dad and I communicate. He would take me to and from school throughout my high school years. Throughout these drives he'd often drop me some life advice and I would be forever grateful for that. When I was 22, 2018, my dad was on his last legs as he had been diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic stomach cancer. He refused to go for chemotherapy and accepted that he was going to die. He wanted to spend his last days in his home tending to his garden. During this period, I would visit him and we would go out for meals from time to time. I literally witnessed the cancer slowly killing him over time. I tried convincing him to go for chemotherapy but he brushed it off. However, despite him being about to die at any point, I spent most of my time playing games on my laptop. I had just graduated at that point and had yet to find a job. I wanted to distract myself. At that point, I already knew I should have spent more time with him. Bonding. But I kept telling myself, the doctor said he had probably half a year. We have time. I took that for granted. That half a year came in 3 weeks. The day before he died, I was in a different state and he texted me asking I wanted to have dinner. I replied saying if we could do it in a few days as I was out of state. I didn't get a reply. At 10 p.m. on that very day, I got a call from my dad's girlfriend saying he had vomited blood and passed out. She told me to rush over to the hospital as he could go at any minute. I panicked. All I could think of was this is too soon. I tried to get a flight, plane, bus back to my state but everything was fully booked due to the festive season. In the end, I had someone drive me 4 hours back to my state and we went straight for the hospital he was at. I don't know if people know this but when cancer patients are about to die, they would be a shell of what they usually were. My dad was largely out of it. He was conscious, but he wasn't very aware of his surroundings. When I arrived at his bedside, I profusely apologized for not being there. I went on and on about being sorry. I don't know if he heard anything I said because all he replied was "Hi, darling." Soon after, he became unresponsive and died a few hours later. To this day, I would weep thinking about his last words to me. I will always regret not spending as much time as I could have with my dad. He deserved more. I never got to have a beer with him at a bar. He loved beer. My actions haunt me every day. I don't think I will ever forgive myself. Spend time with your parents, guys. DL, Drive. I spent most of my time gaming instead of visiting my dad on his last days. I work at a small-town coffee shop that has managed to adapt and stay busy during COVID-19 by utilizing a window for walk-up service. A regular problematic customer, let's call him TJ, is a typical middle-aged man riddled with toxic masculinity. He often makes female employees and customers uncomfortable with his comments. Lately he's been around a lot, being typical TJ. Today he came to our window and ordered a coffee, cool, nothing out of the ordinary. A co-worker asked him if he would like to tip via our Square register. We normally don't verbally ask customers, but with the current pandemic we are not allowing customers to touch our iPad system. He proceeded to tell her to put 100, and reassured them he wanted to tip that much because he appreciates our hard work and effort and wants to chip in since our business has been a bit slower. Okay, I gave him that and almost have a change of heart about DJ. We both outwardly thank him and he goes on his way. I text my boss about this uncharacteristic interaction with TJ and through their end of the register system she was able to look at the transaction. They noticed that not only was the credit card he used not in his name, but in his boss's name, on their company card. Typical TJ. What a D-bag. First time posting, currently a EMS dispatcher for a private ambulance company for 3 years now. We take some calls, however, they're usually seizures, psych, and falls. This one? Probably should have been psych, but unfortunately she wasn't the patient. This call happened in my first year, while I was pretty fresh and didn't understand the power of controlling a call. And #X200B. Me, okay, tell me exactly what happened. CLR, yeah, my mom fell in the other room, you know we have her locked in there right now, but yeah she fell and I think she may have hit her head. Me, okay, are you with her now? CLR, well, you see, she has dementia, and we live in a new home, so she is locked in there. You see, we can't have her wandering because of the bears that are around here. Me, have you gone to check on her yet? CLR, no, I can't unlock her door because she will get out and the bears will get her. Me, can you please go check on the patient? CLR, yeah, I think she might have hit her head, it sounded like she hit the end table, that's what woke me up, but even our big dog, insert large dog brand, is afraid to go outside because there are bears here at this new house. Please send the ambulance but make sure they get in and out quick because the bears will get them. Rinse and repeat for literally every one of the 10 questions involved with a fall. I was essentially working with a third-party caller as she flat out refused to unlock her mother from the room until the EMTs got there, let alone even go look at her. And #X200B. I kid you not, I heard way more about these bears than I ever got out of her regarding her fallen mother. While I may have wanted to bash my head into the desk repeatedly asking her the questions, now I can have a good belly laugh over it. From what I do remember though, Mom was transported alright, and no EMTs were mauled by the darn bears. My mom loved telling this story. I was too small to remember, but it cracks me up every time. When I was around 4 my mom had a visit of one of her friends. She had made a cake and it was baking in the oven. I loved to climb the bench in the kitchen, but my mom told me not to do it, because it was dangerous. So I stopped. My mom's friend wanted to smoke, so my mom joined her to keep her company. They didn't realize was that the door shut behind them. It was no other door open. My mom asked for me to open the door. But I was too short to reach it. So for me to unlock the door, I had to climb the counter. I said I could, cause I was not allowed. She begged and begged, but I would do it. Just this one time she said. Nope, sorry, I'm not allowed. After some time, she gave up. She had to drive one of the cars to the house wall to reach one of the windows in the second floor. She had to pull herself up by her fingers to get in. The cake was burned, and if I know myself, I was probably having a smug grin. Preface: this story is from middle school. I had this friend who was an absolute idiot and always copied my work because I got decent scores. One day she wanted to copy my test, so I put all of the wrong answers on my test and secretly put them in the corner and changed them without her knowing at the end of the test. When we got our tests back, the teacher always would conk out the people who got all of the answers correct and my name was called out. The look of betrayal on her face when her name did not get called out made me so happy. Pretty short story. Me and my friends were shooting off some sparklers, fountains, and cherry blossoms in our backyard, which are all legal to do where I live. Our neighbor immediately storms into our house through the front door and enters into the backyard. He proceeded to call us a handful of names, obviously trying to make us feel bad and guilty, then threatens to call the cops on us. We tell him to get off our property because he's obviously trespassing, and he immediately gets defensive and tries to make up some BS excuse about why he's allowed to trespass if he feels threatened. Eventually he leaves, and we quickly called the cops on him. The cops basically went over to his house and reiterated what we had told him. The cops explained to us that if there was any more trouble with him we could call and have him arrested. We proceeded to run through all 20 Piccolo Petes we had for some icing on top. Clarification: if we were doing this past 10 or 11 at night I'd have felt pretty bad, or if the guy had kids I would have stopped and done the fireworks elsewhere. But this guy is some 30-year-old without kids who constantly threatens to call the cops on us, so flip him. This story happened to me a couple years ago, back when I was in middle school. During PE I started to feel slightly ill, and nauseous. As the period progressed it got worse until I decided it was time to go to the school nurse. The conversation goes as follows. Me: during gym I began to feel nauseous and I think I need to go home. Nurse: I'm sure you're fine sweetie, go back to class. Eventually I convince her I need to lay down and I lay on the bed for several minutes. Then the urge hits me, and I projectile vomit all over her floor. After this she agrees to call my dad and he picks me up. She'll definitely end up believing me the next this happens. TLDR, nurse doesn't believe I'm sick so I throw up on her floor. There's a guest at my hotel who loves to pay for another night away after normal checkout time. Last time she did so my boss had me tell her we would lock her out of the room until she paid if she wasn't up within the hour. Of course she was here in 2 seconds to yell at me. She accused me of being on drugs, of being an idiot etc. the normal stuff. And then she paid and left. Today is her checkout day again and I called to ask if she'd be checking out or staying. Staying, of course, but it'll be 2 hours late. I called my boss and she said to give her the 2 hours and if she's not here tell her the same thing. Lockout. I don't want to deal with her today. Send backup. First time posting, currently a EMS dispatcher for a private ambulance company for 3 years now. We take some calls, however, they're usually seizures, psych, and falls. This one? Probably should have been psych, but unfortunately she wasn't the patient. This call happened in my first year, while I was pretty fresh and didn't understand the power of controlling a call. And #X200B. Me, okay, tell me exactly what happened. CLR, yeah, my mom fell in the other room, you know we have her locked in there right now, but yeah she fell and I think she may have hit her head. Me, okay, are you with her now? CLR, well, you see, she has dementia, and we live in a new home, so she is locked in there. You see, we can't have her wandering because of the bears that are around here. Me, have you gone to check on her yet? CLR, no, I can't unlock her door because she will get out and the bears will get her. Me, can you please go check on the patient? CLR, yeah, I think she might have hit her head, it sounded like she hit the end table, that's what woke me up, but even our big dog, insert large dog brand, is afraid to go outside because there are bears here at this new house. Please send the ambulance but make sure they get in and out quick because the bears will get them. Rinse and repeat for literally every one of the 10 questions involved with a fall. I was essentially working with a third-party caller as she flat out refused to unlock her mother from the room until the EMTs got there, let alone even go look at her. And #X200B. I kid you not, I heard way more about these bears than I ever got out of her regarding her fallen mother. While I may have wanted to bash my head into the desk repeatedly asking her the questions, now I can have a good belly laugh over it. From what I do remember though, Mom was transported alright, and no EMTs were mauled by the darn bears. I had 3 people on Friday get angry with COVID safety measures we have. The first came up to the locked door and said I need to get in there. I asked what he needed SND, he just said it again. I asked how I could help him and he just says you know what, flip this. I'm sick of this COVID stuff, I have an account here. As soon as he said flip this I shut the door and let him have his temper tantrum. The second guy comes up and pulls hard on the locked door. He says he wants to deposit. I direct him to the drive up and he says that line is too long, let me in. I tell him I can't unless he needs a banker. He says I'm sick of this shoot. I'm gonna close my account. Again I let this one throw his temper tantrum. Last guy actually sees a banker and then asks me when are you guys gonna reopen the lobby? I say my usual, we don't really decide that the virus does. He replies so I have to wait for people to stop getting sick for things to go back to normal? Like literally yes? Sorry, people dying is getting in the way of you asking me if you got your direct deposit when you could look it up on your app. Oh, but you don't want to do that because I've always done it this way. You kids and your phones are so distracted. I get that people are frustrated, but I don't get paid enough to risk my life for morons who want to come inside and withdraw 40. Dreading going back tomorrow and having to deal with it again. Here's a story from my collection days in TV service. I call a customer who is 45 days past due. He informs me that times are tough. He got laid off 2 weeks ago. I express some empathy, and then I look at what he's subscribed to. 2 weeks ago, he upgraded his services to the most expensive package, and he also added the Playboy channel. I wanted to ask how his job search was going, but I already knew the answer and I of course am not supposed to be sarcastic on the phone. I suggested that he downgrade his services and he said he would think about it. Yep. So our state mandated that in any public buildings, you need to wear a mask. If a business isn't enforcing that, we can get in trouble and fined, if not anything worse. Well, yesterday morning, a regular customer came in without a mask. Our manager merely told him next time you come in, you'll need a mask because that's mandated now. I guess the customer didn't make a big deal about it. But hours later, After I came in for afternoon, right before the last daylight person left, two women came in, screaming at the tops of their lungs. They demanded to know why their dad was kicked out of the store. When the daylight woman said no one was kicked out, he was merely reminded about the mask rule. They kept screaming, calling her a liar and screaming a bunch of other nonsense. They even took a picture of her and said we'll make you Facebook famous before leaving. And this is not an isolated incident. I've gotten screamed at multiple times over it. Some guy flipped out when I told him he needed a mask. They don't even work. Do you even know anyone with the virus? As if that means I don't have to enforce a rule of the land or my store. I don't give a flip what anyone's opinion of the masks and the virus are. The state mandated this mask rule, and my store told me I had to enforce it. If we don't enforce it, we can get into trouble. I don't know why we have to get screamed at for something that isn't even our fault. I really need some advice because this honestly just left me without words. I watched a group sit at one of the only dirty tables in the restaurant, which was a table that had just gotten up and left, and take the stack of bills left for me as a tip. I saw the money go from a stack of bills to nothing, and then as I looked again to confirm that the money was gone, the stack of money had been replaced by two crumpled up bills on the table instead. My management couldn't do anything about it because I know how poorly it can go with accusations of stealing, but it really just blew my mind and I was extremely upset. How would you all have dealt with this situation? Bartender at a local pizza joint. My buddy came in after a long day dealing with his two sick little girls. He tells me a story from today about the littlest. She's screaming for him from the bathroom. She states she's been waiting for 60 years for him. All she wanted was a cheese pizza from our place. Since they were sick he went with something more appropriate for upset stomachs. But you can guarantee I got him a gift certificate for a cheese pizza for her when she's better. Nice to have good customers to even out the bad ones lol. I worked in housekeeping in a hotel for months up until this past week. I'm now 35 weeks pregnant. I was scheduled to work 5+ days a week, with 20+ rooms to myself. I came into work recently, because I was on the schedule, and I could barely walk. I couldn't bend my back and my ankles were hugely swollen. I had been in L&D the night before to stop contractions. We didn't have many rooms, but 5 housekeepers in-house. Everyone was almost begging my manager to send me home, as we had too many housekeepers for the amount of rooms. Now, I'm huge at this point in pregnancy. I can't bend too far forward in general. My manager and I, discussed a couple weeks ago that she didn't want me cleaning bathtubs, so I was to have another housekeeper come clean my bathtubs. No biggie, I was fine with that. Well, the day before I quit I had went to find another HK to help with a bathtub. Said manager stopped us in the hall and asked what we were doing socializing on the clock. We explained that she was going to clean a bathtub for me and would go right back to her rooms. She yelled at me and said that if I can't do my job, I need to quit so that she can hire someone who's willing to work. I explained that it wasn't that I wasn't willing to work, rather that's one small task that I myself struggle with accomplishing. She didn't care. She continued yelling at me. Now, I've always hated being yelled at, so I spent the rest of my shift crying while cleaning my rooms. I got home from work, still crying. My boyfriend became extremely upset as I told him what had happened. We decided that it's in the best interest of our child that I just be done, as it's a lot of emotional trouble as well as physical. So I gave my manager her wish, and I went in and handed in my scrubs and quit. She seemed sympathetic, said she understood, was sad to see me go, and for me to come talk to her after I was released from maternity leave. Fast forward to today, another HK at said hotel was talking to this manager, while recording the conversation to send to me. She asked if I would be back after baby. The manager told her that I was lazy and a crybaby so she would never consider hiring me back. I'm glad I quit. I feel like I dodged a bullet. I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to convince myself to work in housekeeping again. At my last job, and now in my current job, I would have these mandatory performance reviews that include my performance goals for the upcoming year. When I sign up for these, it's with the express purpose of preparing for a merit increase at the end of the period. This never happened in my last job because they were always making bad decisions that left them scrambling to make ends meet, much less try to give people pay raises. In my new job, of course, there's been an impact from COVID, so I was told there would be no merit increases this year because there's no money available. Okay, I get it, and it's fine because I wasn't eligible this time around anyway, but for next year, they're already saying no raises at the end of this year, but they still want us to do the performance reviews and goal setting. Of course you want your workforce to continue to improve and to meet the demands of the job, But I'm doing that. I just get a kind of minor issue with putting in the effort to do the performance review, but with no payoff from me in it. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who feels this way. In my last job, it was completely pointless because no one even cared, not the employees, the bosses, or the managers. It was just a box you had to check, but here, it's like you're supposed to be all chipper about it like it's going to mean something. I am 14. I am a certified referee in my state. I know the rules as I've played by them my whole life along with taking the officiating classes. At our park district, no headers for ages below 11. But in U12, it is up to the referee's discretion. So if it's a small tap it's okay. That is exactly what happens. So the coach behind me screams at the top of his lungs there are no headers in U12 5 to 16 times. I ignore him. Though I could eject him. It was last game of the season and I didn't care. After a bit of yelling, he says fine, go duck yourself then, which I turn and tell at him for saying in front of you 11 kids. I wish I sent him away or ended the match. Sadly I didn't do much and my partner is a longtime referee, officiated my matches as I grew up, and he is deaf. So he has no idea what happened. The person who runs Park District in my area has been informed and is taking action. So this was a year ago while I was in jump school. This event took place at the 30 feet towers. I was with my group of guys. All 4 of which were cadets. I have a fear of heights and so I hesitated jumping at least twice. I wasn't necessarily messing up, but you could tell my group was becoming irritated with my hesitation. After I had hit the ground a second time and reached the grading station, the black hat in charge told me to think of something mean and told me to stop hesitating. It was then that one of the cadets piped up, "Sergeant Airborne, he's Mormon. This kid doesn't have a mean bone in his body. He isn't capable of thinking mean thoughts." For reference, this black hat was 6,3 and 250 pounds of muscle fully catted on both arms, and he had a mouth. The black hat just started laughing and replied, "I know this private has a mean bone in his body because I'm also Mormon. So don't you dare think we aren't capable of thinking mean thoughts." I stopped hesitating after that, and went on to get my wings. Not my story but one about my great-aunt Nellie from the 60s. She lived on a rural farm where the main water supply for the farmhouse was tanked water that was collected from its roof. As she tells it, they had a bit of a dry spell. It must have been a major drought because they had about 15,000 gallons of water storage. Nellie idioted to nagged my great-uncle George about getting a water tanker delivery to partially fill the tank's storage, but he kept on saying that it would rain soon and it was a waste of money to pay for water when God would provide it for free. Came the evening when the water ran out. They had just enough water in the kettle for breakfast and the morning tea. George was cold so he used most of the water in the kettle to make himself a hot water bottle. In the morning George came down for breakfast and said that his tea and the porridge tasted funny. Nellie then told him that she had made his porridge and tea with the water from his hot water bottle. Her tea was fine, she used the rest of the water in the kettle to make that and she had toast for breakfast. The water tanker delivered 4,000 gallons that morning and God filled the rest of the tank's storage the next week. Not me, but witnessed my bar manager go through this. Customer, excuse me, I've been waiting ages and you served everyone except me. Bar manager, I'm sorry love, what do you want? C, I'm not your love. Stares. BM, I'm sorry, can I get you anything? C, I think it's awful how you ignore customers who have been waiting for so long. BM, I didn't realize you had been waiting so long, what can I get you? C, well, I think this is awful, 5 people must have come after me and been served. BM, I apologize again, I'll get you your drinks now, what would you like? C, for free? BM, sorry, I can't do them for free. C, why not? I've had to wait for so long, it's the least you can do. BM, I don't think it works like that, do you want any drinks or not? C, of course I do, why do you think I was waiting at the bar? But I don't think I should have to pay. BM, you can either buy a drink or stand away from the bar, I'm afraid, that's all we can offer. C, fine. But I don't want you to serve me. BM, why not? C, because you're incompetent, you don't know what you're doing. BM, well everyone else here didn't serve you fast enough either, what difference does it make who pours your drinks? C, well I've just said, anyone but you. Now get somebody else. BM, well, the other staff are busy mixing drinks, so you'll have to wait if you want them. C, are you kidding? Flip you. BM, flip me? I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Commence ranting and shouting, followed by the bouncer escorting her out. I'm not sure if I just give off a customer service vibe or what. I've been a biology student or biologist for almost 15 years, customer service jobs for about 10 before that, but I get mistaken for an employee all the time. Today was Lowe's across the garden section as I looked at pots, yelling, "Sir! Hey sir! Do you work here?" 2 weeks ago it was my small town hardware store. Where are the list of plumbing supplies? I get it at plant nurseries, pet stores, pretty much service jobs where you can kind of dress down. I'm never dressed in a smock or just generic colors and khakis. Just t-shirt and shorts, usually. This has seriously happened my whole life in multiple cities. No freakouts or anything, just the constant specter of employment in place. There must be a French or German word that doesn't translate well for customer service vibes.